Today's filmmaking tip tackles happy accidents. We all hope for happy accidents on our set and in our project. And those are the things that we cannot plan for or control. And I wanted to tackle them because it came up today in one of my classes where a student was asking about planning a project and the intentionality that we put into that versus the luck of something just happening. And then that brought up further questions of like, well, how do you know if the new thing is going to be better than what you had planned? And to a certain extent, you don't know. I mean, you never know. You just have to try it. You have to see. You either follow your gut, whatever it's telling you, to either go with this new thing, this new idea, or not. But as a teacher and as, a guide or a producer or a collaborator, the question is always, what can you prepare? What can you control? And the rest is up for manifestation, for luck, for happy accidents. And you can't just wing it, though, and rely on only luck and happy accidents. And I find that when I do my homework as a filmmaker, when I do all my prep work, that actually gives room for that magic to happen. Because if somebody throws a new idea into the mix and is like, hey, what if we tried this? I have done enough work to know, does this actually fit or not with what my project is, or who this character is, or what's going on in the world, or blah, blah, blah. And sometimes happy accidents just happen, and, there's just literally no way that you could have planned for it. And you want to be able to have room in your production to pivot if you need to. It's like, oh, let's take advantage of this. And really, the only way to have a good, scheduled, containable production is to plan for it as much as you can. So, yeah, I can't teach luck. I can't teach artistic genius. I can't teach talent, but I can teach you how to set yourself up for success and to save room for these moments, right? But what's interesting about happy accidents is that sometimes you want to be on the lookout for things that might not feel like happy accidents and that actually feel like mistakes. And this is something that I talk a lot about with my students and other filmmakers. When you're in the edit, you might not have realized that you crossed the 180-degree line, or you might not have realized that you have a continuity error, or you might not have realized, you jumped the kind of space continuum, or you don't have coverage of certain things. You've created this jump cut. And in reviewing your dailies and, as you're going into the edit, once you discover that you might have some problems in your edit, think about how to make some of those mistakes that create an aesthetic choice into an aesthetic choice. So you kind of double down on the mistake. So if you have a jump cut here that you can't avoid, how do you build in jump cuts as an aesthetic for your project throughout the project? Instead of having that one brand of jump cut, what if your whole film starts having jump cuts at meaningful moments? You don't just throw them in, wherever, but like you make it an aesthetic choice. Same with jumping the 180-degree line. Are there ways to kind of work around it? Can you put an insert shot or cut away to come back to the line or something so that you're not creating that continuity error? And I love Walter Murch's rule of 6 and all of what he talks about with editing, so definitely check out some of his stuff. But jump cuts and continuity errors and 180 degrees, I mean, they bother us, they drive us crazy, but they exist in every film. They exist in every TV show. It just is, sometimes it just happens. And most of the time, people are not even going to notice it. They'll just kind of keep going along as long as they're invested in the story. That's the most important thing, is, just make sure that whatever you're doing is keeping the emotion and the story moving forward, and everything else would kind of fall to the wayside. I remember there was this one happy accident that happened that was purely accidental on the short film for Acid Test, because we ended up cutting out an entire character. So there were these like other scenes that when we decided it just wasn't working and cut him out, there was this moment in the timeline where, as we took out this character's chunk, there was a dissolve effect on the timeline that when it snapped the other two pieces together, it kept that dissolve there and just applied it to the new shot that was sitting there. And all of a sudden we had this really crazy transition that we hadn't even planned, and it was so amazing, and it always gets a great reaction out of the audience. And I remember when I was a student, there was a story going around about Steven Soderbergh's Out of Sight movie, where there's this bar scene where Jennifer Lopez's character and George Clooney's character have this like fake date where they're like role playing their other people, because in fact they're kind of on opposite sides of the law. And then there's a love scene that follows, and in the edit of those two scenes, which were written as separate scenes, all of a sudden the pacing of the film just kind of dragged. And so the editor came up with this idea to kind of basically intercut these two scenes together, and also created this kind of rhythmic beat where the edit would go into these freeze frames, which were really cool. And so those are things where, when you encounter a problem in your edit, what can you do to kind of fix it or to address it? And sometimes you might have these problems, like jump cuts or things like that, but you turn it into an aesthetic, or you make it feel on purpose because of the moment, and those are things where, happy accidents can be both wonderful happy accidents as well as negative disappointments where you're like, okay, now what do I do? And I have to problem solve this. But those are kind of happy accidents in their own way.